Hey guys, hope your Thanksgiving break is going well. Um, for my Paseo Plunge, I wanted to do something with Hispanic culture, but my boyfriend actually convinced me to do Filipino culture instead because he's half Filipino and he thought that would be a cool representation um, for the class. So for my Paseo Plunge, I went to Kumayan night at USD. It is a night that kind of celebrates Filipino culture, which they have like food, events, speakers, um, and that kind of was that. The food was really awesome. It was really cool to see Filipino food. I realized I hadn't really ever had Filipino food before, and it was a cool mix between like Spanish and Chinese food, which I guess makes sense given its geography and its history. So that was kind of a cool thing to be able to experience. And then some of the stuff that they had speakers that talked about Filipino heritage, culture, assimilation to the United States. Um, they talked a little bit just about kind of the Filipino roots and some of the stuff back in the Philippines that's interesting. They had like a presentation on Filipino martial arts, um, on like some other kind of cultural practices they have. So it was a really cool thing to be able to experience and to learn about. Um, I thought it really related well to the classroom, especially in regards to U.S. history and world history. For U.S. history, I think obviously the Spanish American War and the whole U.S. occupation of the Philippines is a very relevant topic. And that's definitely one that I think would hit home with a lot of students, especially considering how um, the kind of the colonialism and the colonization of the Philippines by the by the Spanish and then later the Americans um, kind of resulted in a lot of attacks on Filipino culture and lack of sovereignty for a while for the Philippines. And I think that would be very easy to relate to a lot of other kind of colonial practices that were employed by the United States um, and by the European powers. So that could definitely go with either U.S. history or world history. If you're thinking more about world history, you could definitely relate it to kind of the European powers and their colonization of Africa and of South America, and of course, the colonies, like American colonies as well. Um, some ideas for some stuff I thought that it would be cool to incorporate in the classroom is to have like a speaker come speak about Filipino culture, or to have like Filipino food samples. Um, I think both are like really interesting, and kind of the cool thing is Filipino heritage isn't super common to see stuff about. I feel like a lot of people don't know too much about Filipino history and about, like I said, I never had the food before, even really knew what it was. So I think that'd be a really cool thing to expose students to. Some essential questions I thought would be good to like incorporate into a lesson were to be kind of, especially for U.S. history, kind of what happened with the U.S. and the Philippines, and kind of how it impacted Filipino culture. Um, there was obviously a very big, kind of almost like pretty much a genocide that happened with the U.S. and the Philippines in their attempt to sort of control them, and kind of look into how that sort of impacted Filipino culture and Filipino kind of how they view the U.S. today, and and then another interesting thing would be, how do we see the culture in the U.S.? Why is it that Filipino culture isn't kind of talked about too much or seen much? When there are quite a few Filipino people there, I was surprised. The Filipino student organization at University of San Diego actually has almost 200 members, which is about 1 out of 25 of the undergrad population. So that's a pretty significant amount for a group that it doesn't seem to have very much not presence, but doesn't seem to be very represented in the population in terms of knowledge about their history. Um, and then kind of comparing that to other minorities in the United States and seeing, where are the similarities, where are the differences. Why is it that we know more about Hispanic culture maybe than Filipino culture, and kind of like how are they similar? Both kind of stem from Spain and maybe from the United States as well. So that would be really interesting. A project I kind of thought about would be to kind of analyze the roots of Filipino history and see like where it stems from Spain, where it stems from China and the Asian countries around it, where it stems from the U.S., because obviously it went through all these periods of control. I think that would be a really interesting thing to do with it. And then, of course, relate it back to today with minority politics and kind of the whole just theme of colonization. Um, so overall, really cool event. I was really glad to be able to experience that. I definitely recommend doing something with the Filipino Student Organization at USD or just learning about Filipino history in general. Um, but yeah, thanks.